Every time you query an AI, the request enters a massive warehouse packed with dark, incredibly loud, and extremely hot server cabinets. This animated diagram shows the geographic footprint of exactly how much power those servers require. By 2026, the energy demand to keep global AI data centers running is projected to exceed 500 terawatt-hours, matching the entire annual electricity consumption of Germany. Pushing that much constant high-density energy through legacy power grids causes them to physically break down. When a local grid experiences a sudden voltage drop, it triggers sympathetic tripping, a cascading failure shutting down interconnected facilities to avoid hardware damage. The digital revolution is hitting the hard physical limits of the Earth's resource base, and everyday consumers are already absorbing the cost through strained electrical grids and surging utility bills. The ecological toll is just as heavy. Research from Cornell University projects that by 2030, the current rate of AI growth will put up to 44 million metric tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere every year. To prevent these processors from melting down, facilities pump millions of gallons of water through chemical cooling loops. That same Cornell study projects the industry will drain over 1 billion cubic meters of fresh water annually, equivalent to the household usage of 10 million people. Tech expansion relies on 3 finite resources: land, fresh water, and electrical grid capacity. In major data hubs from Northern Virginia to Arizona, all 3 are hitting their ceiling. While efficiency gains slow this impact, they struggle against an industry projected to grow its power demand by 165% in the next 5 years. To maintain that exponential trajectory, tech giants are planning a radical pivot, moving the heaviest compute infrastructure off the planet entirely. Tech monopolies and national governments are now racing to build the next generation of AI infrastructure, roughly 2,000 kilometers above the ground, in low Earth orbit. Elon Musk recently proposed a merger between SpaceX and AXI. The goal is to link Musk's launch capabilities with his AI model development, utilizing the Starlink V3 satellite network to build orbital data hubs. They have well-funded competition. Google is developing an orbital AI cloud network called Project Suncatcher, and NVIDIA is backing a startup named StarCloud, which has already launched H100 processing chips into space as a proof of concept. Financial analysts project this specific market for in-orbit data centers will reach $39 billion by 2035. These companies are committing billions to ensure they own the physical hardware of the global AI network. This animated diagram shows why operating supercomputers in the vacuum of space makes engineering sense. In orbit, satellites harvest continuous, unfiltered solar energy without atmospheric interference or nighttime interruptions. By placing the hardware in a dawn-dusk sun-synchronous orbit, riding the permanent line between day and night, the solar panels are constantly bathed in sunlight. That makes a single panel up to 8 times more productive than one on Earth. Space also solves the cooling crisis. Instead of evaporating millions of gallons of groundwater, orbital data centers use massive radiators to vent the intense heat of AI processors directly into the freezing vacuum. To move the data, these satellites rely on optical inter-satellite links. By firing targeted lasers at each other, these floating nodes transmit heavy AI workloads at blazing speeds, without constantly bouncing signals down to ground stations. This hardware is only viable now because launch costs are dropping. SpaceX's heavy-lift rockets are driving down the price of putting mass into orbit, aiming for a target of $200 per kilogram by the mid-2030s. By securing unlimited solar power and vacuum cooling, tech companies bypass the resource bottlenecks currently suffocating their terrestrial data centers. But lifting thousands of metric tons of server racks into orbit requires an enormous amount of chemical combustion. The Georgetown Environmental Law Review warns that the soot and greenhouse gases released by constant satellite launches could act like millions of diesel dump trucks circling the globe. Right now, the launch industry operates with minimal environmental oversight. Regulatory exceptions, like categorical exclusions under the National Environmental Policy Act, allow private companies to launch massive payloads with little public assessment. Once that hardware reaches orbit, it crowds a narrow band of space. Adding thousands of heavy new data satellites drastically increases the probability of catastrophic, high-speed collisions. If the industry expands without strict rules, we risk trading localized energy and water shortages on Earth for a toxic, debris-filled disaster in our immediate orbit. Some groups are attempting to build an ethical framework for this technology. Initiatives centered on indigenous data sovereignty argue that local communities should govern how orbital infrastructure processes their information, treating the technology as a relationship to be stewarded rather than a raw commodity. We are in a brief, highly consequential window of time. The infrastructure choices engineers and regulators make right now will lock in the technological trajectory for the next century. We have the capability to move heavy computational burdens off our planet, allowing local aquifers and energy grids to recover. But we also have the capacity to simply extract our most extractive habits into the solar system. The hardware is already leaving the launch pad. The only question left is whether we establish the rules of engagement before the gold rush turns low Earth orbit into a toxic, unusable debris field.